Well, welcome to another episode of Out of the Dark. And this week we've got a very special guest. Got Erik Knight, local entrepreneur, husband, father, everything man. How are you doing?
Everything, man. I like that.
Yeah.
We can go with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. This is a really cool setup you got here.
Yeah. And we've got a lot of good stuff to talk about. In particular, of course, we're going to touch on AI. That's a little bit of a specialty of yours. But why don't you tell the people first who you are and how long you've been in the area and all that good stuff?
All right. So I've been here. I've been in Arizona almost all my life. But I've been up in the Prescott area since about 2008. And we used to summer here all the time before that. But you know, everything used to revolve around the valley. When I say valley, I mean the big valley. So down in Phoenix. And my game has always been really startups, tech startups.
Mhm.
And traditionally I've sold those tech startups and then went into real estate for a little bit and then started another tech startup and do a rinse, repeat, that kind of thing. And it's kind of given me the opportunity to be in a wealth of areas and have a lot of different experiences. So not just the tech side of things, but also, real estate's a completely different world than tech.
Mhm.
So wow, I mean, where do you want to begin? There's just so much that I've had, in my short time period of experiences, everything from cybersecurity, which it excites me that you're doing a lot of this stuff because this area desperately needs those kind of things because you go to a large area and they've got a lot of resources
Mhm.
and the risk is the same up here
Oh,
in
yeah,
the Prescott
absolutely.
area as the biggest city that on the planet, and a lot of business owners are just kind of a blind eye to it up here. So excited to see that for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. And so, we can jump right into that. We were talking about how many attacks are happening to every business, even, the one man car repair shop, they're facing some of these attacks. They don't even realize. And I really like the way that you put it with your analogy.
So I used to travel and do speaking stuff and some cybersecurity topics. One of my businesses was a cybersecurity company. Been heavily into communications prior to that, and what we saw was that everybody's got an internet connection now. It's like
Mhm.
a direct wire into your world, and we saw. And this is 10 years ago now. Something like 20,000 attacks a day. It doesn't matter. It's blind to who you are. It doesn't matter if you're in Phoenix or Dallas or Prescott. There's 20,000 people a day trying to get into that internet connection.
Mhm.
And, if you're a business, you're even a hotter target because they're after some real prime data. And what we used to say is like, if you had $20,000 or 20,000 people a day trying to throw a rock through your front window, you'd be freaking out right now.
Yeah. Yeah. That'd be
And
nuts.
this was 10 years ago. So you probably know the numbers, the stats, what they are now. But that's insane. You would be freaking out right now if that many people were trying to destroy and disrupt your business. They are doing that or trying to do that through your internet connection.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We see it every day. I logged into my home router to take a look at the logs, and y- that home my home network is completely separate from the business, and it was still being attacked hundreds of times a day, if not thousands on some days. It was
Well, I
yeah.
just don't think people realize the resources that are out there. There's a specific database which is completely free to access, and it literally tracks every single thing that is open at your house. So if you've got security cameras, if you've got computers that are open and things like that. I was on the phone with clients and I'd be like, "Oh, is this your computer?" And it would take a screenshot of their login screen to their
Oh
computer
my
of their
goodness.
background, and it's just publicly available on the internet.
Yeah.
It blows my mind. It doesn't matter what you are. You can be a real estate company. You're still at risk. You can be medical. You don't have to be a high tech company. In fact, if you're not a high tech company, you're probably at more risk because
Mhm.
people think that, oh, no big deal. Nobody wants me. I think that's the biggest problem, Niles,
Mhm.
is everybody thinks, well, I'm just a small business. I've got no employees. Nobody's interested in me. But that's not the case. They're interested in the easiest target.
Yeah, that's one thing that we know about cyber criminals is they're definitely lazy. If they can get an easy payday, they're gonna do that before working hard for it.
They are. So you were asking me about breaches and things like that. I actually had things like a identity theft situation 20 years ago with eBay.
Okay.
And it actually, thinking back to that experience, blows me away how much like the FBI has and all the processes and the papers and things like that that they had. And this is 20 some years ago,
Mhm.
maybe even be longer ago. And that they had all of these detailed and all of this process, and they just overloaded you with information. And now I'm sure it's far worse. And so the best defense is don't get hacked. Don't lose your identity.
Yep.
But that is a serious risk because everything we do is online now.
Mhm.
Everything is digital. And uh I actually used to have a company that would do research on people, and background checks and things like that. And we always said that if you had three pieces of information about a person,
Mhm.
you could become that person.
Oh, yeah.
That's all it takes is three pieces. And we're talking things like address, phone number,
Mhm.
um, anything that's a birthday.
Yep.
And okay, shameless plug. One of my businesses, I do own Prescott executive offices in the area, and we actually push mailboxes because you would be shocked about the amount of business owners in the area that. And this is awesome. I love business owners going out and starting it, but they're in a rush and they go to the corporation commission and they put their home address on there.
Mhm.
And
I mean, I did it
oh,
originally.
and
Yeah.
the thing is that never goes away.
Mhm.
That paperwork never goes away. And so anybody can go on there and pull your home address. And even like from a personal standpoint, I always say, even if you don't own a business, have a PO box or something, have something that you can have your credit cards go to. Because again, zip code is one of those identifiers.
Yep.
If somebody can get your credit card number and figure out your zip code, because that's where everything's mailed to, they can start spending all your money. So we always say if you're going to start a business, don't use your home address. You don't have to use our mailing situation, but
But something
do
like that.
something.
Yeah.
Do something. So the first thing is I know people are probably excited to go start a business. Just don't ever put your home address down because you can't undo that. And the worst thing you want to see is, and people do. I'm guilty. Like when somebody, I'm looking at a local business to do business with and things like that. I pull all their information and just a Google search those
Yeah, it
addresses, and
doesn't take a
it
lot.
doesn't take much. And then I'm on looking on Google Street View and be like, oh, what do they own? That's an interesting house that they've got there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I don't think anybody wants that out there for them. And so again, no matter what it is, whether it's the UPS store or something, if you're going to launch a business, I think number one protector, even personal,
Yeah.
is do not use your home address for sensitive information or separate it, right?
Yeah.
And things like that. And so it does pain me every time I see that. And somebody comes at me with this really professional looking webpage and this really professional looking business, and then the next line is their home address.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah.
and
Yeah, you
so
hate to see it.
yeah, I do hate to see that.
So, uh, thinking about all of this information that, being in the industry, I understand this is not new information. This is not new advice. The fact that it's really easy to get this information or find out about their home network and or business network and see all the vulnerabilities. Uh, This information has been out, what? I mean, at least 10, 15 years in the industry. Why do you think it's taking so long for businesses to like really understand the threat?
I think it's you've got to know you've got an issue. We talk a lot, and I love analogies. Think of it like your car. If somebody backs into your car and you're walking up to your car and you see, oh my gosh, somebody backed into my car, look at all the damage, versus somebody backing into your car, bumping in the bumper and it pops back out and you never see it.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean the accident didn't happen. But I think in the cyber realm, in the computer realm, people don't necessarily see. There's nobody going out there and saying, "Oh, I stole your information. Here's the flag. Look at me, look at me, look at me." There are services out there like LifeLock. I think it's now by Symantec owns it, or Norton.
Norton
Norton.
owns it, I think.
Stuff
Yeah.
like that. They will tell you when when your stuff hits what's called the dark web, which is just offline websites and things like that.
Mm.
They'll send you a notification. I'm actually shocked the amount of notifications I've seen,
Uh-huh.
where it's like, okay, this piece of information was found. Nobody's calling you up and saying, hey, your stuff's been hacked, it's online, unless they're demanding money or something. And so I really think it's people have lost information. They've been hacked,
Mhm.
but they just don't know. And it's out there. And there's no flag or somebody waiting saying, hey, this is at risk, this is it. And so if you don't see it, it didn't happen.
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think that's
it's
really the
not
biggest thing.
tangible.
It's not tangible,
So
right?
it's hard to. Do you think there's a little bit of apathy mixed into that? because we hear about these data breaches all the time.
You know, there was a time period um, where we saw almost daily that there was a data breach. You guys remember years ago now, there was a big Home Depot credit card hack,
Yep.
the Target hack.
Yep.
It was big, big news. And we're talking middle 2010s time period, somewhere in
Somewhere in
there.
there. Yeah.
It made the news regularly and it hurt their stocks. It was a big deal, but it started to happen so regularly. I don't think it makes the news anymore. It's just par for the course.
Hmm.
I do read deep in the under the headlines of a lot of data breaches and hacks for larger companies, and it's just like, oh yeah, they just and they're brushing it off. And I think it's just become so common that it doesn't make the news anymore.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And that's something that I like to, well, I've heard a good friend say is you're not too small to get hacked. You're just too small to make the news.
You're right. You're too small to hit make the news, and I'm sure the price has gone up. But the average, there was a marketing campaign for a while ago. It said the average hack costs $250,000.
It's up to 4.5 million now.
4.5. Well, and so the perfect
Yeah.
example, I bet you almost every small business owner is like, I don't have $4.5 million, so it's not going to affect me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Right.
mean,
Yeah.
that's the attitude, so the bottom line is it puts them out of business.
Yeah.
And it's really sad. It happens a lot, but they go quietly.
Mhm.
People wonder why their brand just disappeared or why some company, nobody's talking about, oh, well, they were hacked. It was the later on cause. Their bank account ran out of money. Well, because they were hacked,
Right. Yeah.
those type of things. And so I still don't think it's meeting the headlines of the original reason, because there is a delay when somebody gets hacked or something happens like that. It's not like the next day. Ransomwares have made it a lot more, a lot quicker.
Yeah.
But in most cases, it's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months later before the effects of that stuff going down actually take effect.
Yeah. Yeah. And you bring up a good point. It's not necessarily this one event that happens and suddenly you're dead in the water. Like you said, ransomware kind of is that, but there's a lot of other types of attacks.
Well, and ransomware got scary because it was immediate.
Hmm.
And our advice that we received from the FBI and things like that, which is don't pay.
Yep.
That's kind of their attitude.
Yep.
A lot of business owners just don't have that liberty. They don't have the proper things in place, and they've got to pay. The sad part of that situation is if you pay, they'll then just sell that information on how they did it to the next person, and you're back that way in 3 or 4 weeks, back in
Hmm.
the same situation. So the best advice is just don't get hacked.
Right. Right.
That's
Yeah, easy to say, right?
right.
Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, I talked about it on our episode 1. Is there's a small medical clinic that got hit here with ransomware, and they had like 10 employees, and so
Mhm.
size doesn't matter. The criminals aren't going to discriminate. If they can get paid one way or the other, they're going to get paid.
Well, and it reminded me, HIPAA is a good thing, right? I
Hmm.
mean, we talk about that a lot. Nobody took HIPAA seriously for years until somebody got fined.
Yeah.
And that company that got fined was in Arizona.
Oh, really?
The first company that ever got HIPAA violation fines about 15 years ago
Yep.
was in Arizona. And all of a sudden, everybody started taking it seriously. But it's a real thing.
Mhm.
And a lot of people didn't take it seriously. So you talk about all the other cyber stuff. It's not real until you know somebody personally it's happened to. And that's really the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, having a personal experience with it. Now, and that leads back to something you said earlier. I'm a big believer that we need to talk about it. We need to get over the embarrassment and accept the fact, okay, I got hacked. I need to teach people what I learned from it. What do you think about that?
You're right. It is embarrassing because when you've been hacked or you have some kind of data breach, um, there's a lot of shade like thrown like you misstepped and now you're being punished and shamed. So the best thing to do is obviously, as they say, best data plant a tree is today.
Yeah.
And I think cyber and those kind of serious things, if you're ignoring it until tomorrow or, oh, we'll do it tomorrow, we'll plant that tree tomorrow or the next day or next week. I think the cyber stuff is just as bad. And we talked about it at lunch earlier today. Your staff and employees are just the same amount of risk.
Mhm.
And I don't think a lot of people are planned or prepared for that. I had an incident a number of years ago where we let somebody go for cause, and they came in to get their last check and turn in their equipment, and they were connected to our Wi-Fi, downloading all of our code, and
Wow.
downloading all of our resources and things like that. That we just didn't think. Well, yeah, why is this person sitting, across the street? What are they doing, kind of thing. And the only recourse we had was to run and unplug the Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
And that's just an off case that we noticed it. I mean, a lot of things is,
When you're lucky you caught it.
well, yeah, when you're letting somebody go or when somebody's parting ways with a company, there's a million things you got to do. You got to worry about, proper documentation, you've got to worry about unemployment. You got all of these moving points, can make sure their customers are taken care of or they drop the ball, or you're not really thinking about those details. And so having those systems in place, you can have, you don't think about it. Oh, well, this employee could cause a cyber breach. They could inadvertently, and they're not thinking they're doing anything wrong. And you're not thinking that they would do anything wrong, but the data's gone.
Mhm.
The data's out there. And so people need to really be thinking about just how wide that could really go.
Yeah. You're in a good position where you are a technical person, but the average business owner has, half or less the knowledge that you do. How does the average business leader keep up with all this?
Even for me, it's daunting.
Mhm.
It's like insurance. It's like, how much insurance can you have? You can never have enough insurance. So it really comes down to doing what you can
Mhm.
and surrounding yourself and hiring experts. I mean, there's a limit to everything, but making sure that you've done your best to mitigate future risk. And I think that's in any business. It's not just about cyber risk. It's not just about that. So if you
Absolutely.
have a
Any
fleet of,
risk.
well, if you have a fleet of cars down the street, you don't, you know, send them around with stuff hanging off of them where they could injure somebody, or you don't not maintenance the brakes. I mean, you're mitigating by taking care of all these things, you're mitigating your business risk. Now you can always take things too far, but you service the brakes regularly. You do things that are accepted practices so that if something did go wrong, you did get in an accident, that the liability is much lower than it would be if you just had a fleet of cars and didn't do the brakes and didn't do tires. And nobody does that. The
Yeah.
cybersecurity piece is the same thing. And I think many business owners are like, yeah, I just plugged everything in.
Mhm.
Uh, that's like not doing your brakes or your tires.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's one more thing I think we have to accept as business leaders. We have to learn at least a little bit about it
Mhm.
to manage that risk. We gotta be aware of at least the high level pieces of that.
Yeah, and I think it's probably because of the way IT kind of grew into our lives. It was slow.
Mhm.
And it was, oh, well, I can just have this kid plug this in. I
Yeah.
can just have somebody put this together. But while a lot of the technologies still kind of have the same form, we still have firewalls, we still have network switches, we still have plugs in the wall. They've grown. We have everything on it now. Our phones
Mhm.
are on the internet, like all the desk phones and things like that. Everything, computers, all of our applications, our cameras for our security, like everything is now connected. But we still have the attitude of, oh, I'll just have some kid plug it in and
Yeah.
throw it together. And again, that may have worked 30 years ago, but now everything is reliant on those kind of things. And so, just like you would any other aspect of your business, plan, plan, plan.
Yeah, and invest a little in it, like you said, there's a limit to everything. There's only so many dollars that you can put toward it, but you need to put something.
Yeah, I think the majority of business, especially like we talked about starting out, what's the first thing you do? Rush out and get your corporation paperwork.
Yeah.
You're not thinking about, okay, what software systems am I going to use?
Uh-huh.
How's my computer going to plug in and things like that. And maybe that's not the thing you do on day one, but as you grow, those things just can't get ignored.
Yeah.
They just can't.
And when we come in with a new client, it's a lot easier if they did a little bit of planning, a little bit of foresight into how to implement technology than if they didn't think about it till 3 years down the road, and now we have to fix all these things.
And
Yeah.
that's how it grows, right?
Yeah.
I can only imagine the stories you have
Mm.
of walking into stuff, because I remember doing it. Like I was in that realm. We change out phone systems for VoIP systems, which are ones that run over the network and things like that. We walked into things that have been sitting there for 20 years,
Yeah.
and there's no reason it should still be working. but it worked, and so they didn't mess with it. But you fast forward today, there's just too much risk associated with going to Best Buy and thinking that you're going to uplift your whole business on technology that you can just pick off the shelf. And unfortunately, a lot of those commodity products, those are the news articles I am seeing.
Mhm.
This manufacturer has a hack. This manufacturer has a hack, and things like that. And how would you know unless you're a tech industry person? You just can't keep up with it. You need a pro.
Yeah. Well, and being in the industry, it's hard to keep up with it. So when you're not doing that
Yeah,
day in and day out, uh, you gotta have someone by your side at least.
it's almost impossible to keep up with.
Yeah.
I'm still on security mailing lists, and the CV
Uh-huh,
whatever
yep,
that come
yep.
out, and like A, I couldn't read them all, and B, it blows your mind the amount of stuff and how creative people are. Like the hacks and the stuff that comes down the chain. I'm like, they did what? They soldered these two pins together and did this and hacked this
Uh-huh,
and
yeah,
dumped this, and I'm just like, who has that kind of time?
yeah.
But somebody does and did, and I'm always, I guess, I'm never surprised anymore just by
It
what comes out of things.
Several years ago, I was reading an article about a new method for hacking into air-gapped systems. So for anyone that doesn't know, air-gapped system, it's a computer or server or something that is not physically connected to any network. It's not on Wi-Fi. It's you have to go to the computer to get on it. Okay. So
We call it sneaker net.
sneaker net?
Sneaker
Okay,
net.
there you go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You have to go in
Yeah.
there with a thumb drive or something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so you only really see air-gapped systems for like really high level
Government stuff, things like
government
that.
stuff,
Yeah.
or I'm sure Google has some air gap stuff somewhere. Uh, but the way that this hack happened is first they have to get someone with a flash drive to go plug into the computer, and it installs malware. And then what that malware does is it causes the light on the front of the computer to
Mhm.
blink in like Morse code, essentially.
Yeah.
And then if you have a view from a window, you could get a drone or something and read that and get data transmitted off that server.
I saw that.
It's insane.
So I even saw one where they changed the hard drive blinky light to
Mhm.
do it for them, or the
Yeah.
numlock key.
Yep.
So they didn't even have to install anything. They just had to get the software on there, and it would use existing lights and
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah.
And it freaks me out. So in our offices, we have copiers too.
Mhm.
And everybody scans with a thumb drive. Scares the crap out of me, Niles. Like
I don't blame you.
well, in what people don't realize is, so I guess as things evolved, technology evolved, every single USB controller is the same piece of hardware. So I don't care
Mhm.
if you have a Mac, I don't care if it's a Dell or whatever it may be, or a copy machine, it's the same controller. And so somebody's developed software to where when you plug into it, it compromises it and then starts infecting all the rest, and it snowballs.
Mhm.
And so we've come to a place where every single one of these devices are the same. And so you just grab a bad USB and the things that they can do, and you can wipe your computer and you can't get rid of it because it goes on the hardware of the device itself. I heard that and just like, oh, we're in trouble.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we could go down that rabbit hole. Thankfully, I think the good news in all that is these incidents of these being used, at least mostly, are just in the lab. Security researchers, figuring this stuff out.
they are, and
Yeah,
that's the thing is what could be, right?
yeah,
But if you look at the way the world's evolving, everything from identity, everything from hacking, things like that, you've got people in rooms in third world countries that have nothing but time.
mhm,
And if they come away with $3 that day, that's a win for them.
yeah,
And when you put time and need together, and maybe a little boredom in there because I got nothing better to do, the stuff that we're hearing about in labs become real world stuff pretty quick.
certainly. Yeah, yeah, and we kind of touched on it before, but it's really, as a small business owner, what you can do is make it more difficult. If you have something in place,
Mhm.
9 times out of 10, that hacker's moving on to an easier target.
And you're right. And that's really what it comes down to. We call that, security through obscurity.
Right.
But it's a
Yeah.
little bit more to that, is people are lazy. And the thing is your neighbor or the next person or the next business, probably if you've done something, if you have IT, if you have security stuff involved, a decent firewall, things like that, they're going to give up and move on,
Mhm.
uh, because they're going to make that $3 or that five, whatever it is for that day. And they need to do that to move on because you're just not worth the energy. But the problem is as your neighbor secures or the next business secures, well, now you're the easier target.
Yeah.
And so you've got to stay up on it. You've got to stay up on things. And that's where I don't think people I'm blown away by how long things stay in place. Somebody will buy a device and it'll sit there for 10 years.
Mhm.
Not maintenance, not thought about, not like that's what's always crazy in the space.
I think the I don't say worst industry, but the most difficult industry is like manufacturers where they have equipment that is computerized, but it costs $50,000,
Mhm.
$100,000 for this piece of equipment or
And that
machinery.
was fine 20 years ago
Yeah.
before it was connected to the internet. But then they're like, oh, well, just let's connect
Yeah.
that thing up. But I was talking with somebody yesterday. It's like, you could solve that. There's a Wi-Fi for your washer now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that way the clothes don't sit in there for 3 or 4 days because you forgot about it.
Uh-huh.
It'll just ping your phone. But there's new complications by connecting that to your overall network. And I don't
Mhm.
think a lot of people think about those kind of things because you could run your water and flood your house if
Mhm.
somebody hacked it. Those kind of consequences, um, that I love the convenience, but I just think before people jump to connect stuff, they really think through, okay, what could be the risks here? And am I properly kind of not making things perfect, but securing it enough to where they're going to go after my neighbors?
Right, yeah. It makes me think about any advancement in technology, not just like computers. It all comes with risks.
Mhm.
You have my favorite thing in my wife's car is the dynamic cruise control.
Mhm.
It's great. It's a great convenience. But if I just trust it and look away, I'm going to get in a wreck.
Yep.
Same idea with our computers and our Wi-Fi network connected devices. We just got to take a little bit of precaution.
Yeah. And I think the excitement of, oh, well, guess what? I'm just going to plug this new thing in, this new oven.
Yeah.
Um, i I get it. I get the excitement and the convenience, but even on a business front, convenience is really what causes a lot of the security risks. I see a lot
Oh,
of people.
100%.
Yeah, I see a
Yeah.
lot of people, especially believe it or not, executives are probably the worst that I've dealt with,
Yeah.
because they are like, oh well, I just make it my birthday or
Yeah.
my password, whatever it is,
Uh-huh.
or make this simple. I need to be able to get in from here and do this.
Or I need access to everything. You
Right.
know who I'm talking to. You know?
And so and that is any convenience. If it's easy to get into and manage and do stuff, it's probably easy for the hacker to get into too.
And it's a wonderful thing on the consumer side, although at home it still has risks. But it's wonderful that we're in this age where you can pick up a fancy new cell phone and hook it in and turn your lights on and off, and it's a great place, especially if you're a techie person. But yeah, the
Well,
risks you got to pay attention to
and
those
that's the thing
risks.
is, and you're right. And a lot of people just don't know. They just connect it. And so the proper way, is Wi-Fi was designed and networks were designed to segregate devices and traffic.
Right.
And so a lot of this stuff comes in from other countries and there's questionable. Do you really want your oven on the same Wi-Fi as your kid's computer?
Mhm.
I mean, you've heard of all the stories where people have the cameras in their kids' room, like
Mhm.
crib cams and things like
Oh yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And they've proven that other people are not only watching them, but talking back. Have you seen all those stories where
I've yeah.
that just
Oh, it
man,
gives
that
me
makes
the
my
willies.
yeah, that makes my skin crawl. You got somebody halfway around the world, um, talking to your child.
Yeah.
That does, but it's real.
Yeah.
It's
And
real.
and we could go on for days talking about all these different things it's real. It sounds like something out of a, sci-fi thriller. Uh, but how do you think we start to get a grasp on this as a society to make things just a little more secure, a little better, have a better mentality? How do we do that?
So I think AI is going to have a big effect on it. This is a cyber tech has always been a nuclear arms race,
Mhm.
which is it steps up. We get a fix, we get a better technology, and the hackers get better, and it's this constant cycle. So you've got to be fast and you've got to be on top of things. But I really think a lot of the AI things because it's good at being fast. It's good at recognizing patterns and things like that. I think that will be the fix, but it also means that AI will be unleashed as the bad guy too.
Hmm.
And so
We're already
while
starting to see that.
I think we're already
Yeah.
starting to see that. Are you seeing the quality of these calls? So I remember 5 or 6 years ago, people would call and be, try to do scams over the phone. And for a lot of people, it's pretty obvious.
Hmm.
But for people, seniors and things like that, it wasn't as obvious, especially they muffled it, like they got really good. But now the AI audio is so good. I can, don't do it, but right off of our, 15 seconds of this podcast, we can clone our voices
Yeah.
and they are good
It's so convincing.
and they are convincing. Then
Yeah.
you put that over a phone line where there's a little bit of degradation.
Hmm.
It sounds, you couldn't tell. And so the responses now are also faster. We were talking about that at lunches. The AI responses are fast. And so you don't know if it's a human or not. We have AI attendants answering phones and things like that. And it's funny because sometimes the question is are you real? They're not sure. They've already started that interaction
Yeah.
and they're not sure if that person's real. You had a real person's voice to it, like yours or mine. Then what? And so I think things are going to escalate on all fronts, but it can also be a tool if people are willing to implement these tools and these new technologies to kind of combat it. But if you're not, you're in big trouble.
Hmm.
I've done a lot of podcasts about AI and things like that. And I have a lot of questions. Like, what does the job market look like in the next 5 years? There's a lot of big questions there, and I feel like that I'm up on the forefront of these kind of things. But man, there are days I turn on, vlogs and things like that. I'm like, oh my gosh, what? It is bam, bam, bam
Yeah.
every
What
day.
happened overnight?
Yeah, every day there's something new, and that's what I think people really need to. You don't need to be freaked out by it, but you need to realize that things are moving so fast. Um, and that when you've got computers that are on 24/7,
Hmm.
7 days a week, that can, it takes us 7 minutes to learn something new. These AIs and these technologies can learn 700 things every 100 milliseconds.
Hmm.
It's hard to just fathom what that is. So just be excited, use these tools,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
but also be aware that people are going to use these tools against you.
Yeah. And what I found with AI, first of all, it's just being aware of them, like you said. Don't get freaked out. Don't be overly concerned. Understand that you're going to have to take some precautions. But even then, with all this advancing technology, new AI tools, the basic cybersecurity advice still applies and will still protect you against these new threats.
Well, and I think that everybody needs a consultant. This is the AI thing. I'm not going to say it's a fad because it's here to stay, right? It's just going to grow.
Mhm.
The thing is it's happening just like networks evolved, where we just started casually plugging stuff into it. Right now, people go to ChatGPT or one of the other hundreds, if not thousands, that are out there right now, and they start plugging in their stuff because it's a useful tool. But they're putting sensitive data in there. People are dumping HIPAA and
Oh my
medical
goodness.
records and things like that, and they don't understand the implications of. Yeah, it's a fantastic tool, but there has already been like 15 data breaches by not just mom and pop doctor down the street. Last year, Samsung was putting secret chip plans into I think it was OpenAI, and
Oh goodness.
they dumped some hacker dumped the web interface and got all those. They're breached. These are confidential, highly confidential, secret chip plans that this big Fortune 100 company is their employees are putting their stuff in there. So, we talked about this, and I'm sure you deal with this a lot. I've had conversations with cities and major organizations. What is your AI policy?
Hmm.
And they look at me like with deers in their headlight, like that's a thing. Yes,
Yeah.
that is a thing because guess what? Your employees are using it.
Oh, 100%. If
Last year,
if they can click
yeah.
a button and get to it, they will use it.
And they are using it.
Yeah.
And so even those that are saying, well, we have a no AI policy here. And I've been told that.
Mhm.
I'm like, your employees are then popping up their phone and they're using it.
Yeah. I asked my daughter's school, "What's your AI policy?"
What do they say?
Well,
And they don't have one.
Yeah.
I've asked my kids' school, and first it was we're not sure. I got that, even from some of the local colleges.
Uh-huh.
Then it was absolutely not. but then they don't have the tools to detect what's being
Yeah.
used.
So how are you following up on that? Yeah.
Right. And so I think it comes back to we're like full circle to the planning thing. And a company can't just say no because it's going to get used. But
Mhm.
if okay, you're going to use this AI.
Mhm.
You're going to use this internal infrastructure that we're developing just for us. It's secure, it's private. Those kind of things are required because you're not going to tell. It's like telling a little kid no. They're going to go use it, especially
Yeah.
if it's like, well, wait a minute. If I use this, I have 6 hours of break time because that's how long it would take to do this task.
Yeah.
They're going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. My
And
boss won't find out.
right,
So
right. Of course, especially if it's all off net. But the problem is okay, you're risking all of that data, everything that you put into that little black box, especially with public AIs. And they're almost all public AIs. Most people are not running private AIs yet, which blows my mind. That's a different topic. Um, Somebody else could see it.
yeah.
And there's not a whole lot of stuff that you really want people seeing that people are putting in that black box.
Mhm.
Everything from medical records to secret information about company financials,
Yeah.
trying to get psychology information from people. Like, it's all there, but
Well, it's what they say. If it's free, then you are the product.
then you were the product. Absolutely.
That's never been more true with AI, than with AI.
It is. And on that note, I'm happy to see Facebook charging for certain secure accounts. And
Mhm.
for a business owner, I don't know how you cannot not pay them.
Yeah.
So anytime any of those services charge, and if I'm really going to use it, heck yeah, I will.
Oh,
I will
it's
pay
it's a
them in
big green
second.
flag.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but the world's changing fast.
Mhm. And it's an exciting time. AI is going to give us a lot of cool stuff to. I mean, it already has, but it's only going to get better. There's a lot of threats and risks associated with it, of course. If you had one word of advice for the average small business owner around AI, what would it be?
You got to use it. You got to learn it. There's two camps. I see younger business owners that are all about adopting,
Mhm.
and they're using. I've watched organizations go from no employees or sorry, a lot of employees, 5 to 10, 15 employees, to explosive growth and still have the same number of employees. And then I've seen a lot of businesses that are more mature businesses, those businesses that have been around 10, 20 years. They're the same ones that say, I don't need a website, but
Yeah, yeah.
we won't talk about that. But that say, I don't need this. And it only takes one hot shot to come out and do the workload of 15 people
Mhm.
and take that business. I look a lot of the trades here. A lot of the trades here, they don't do advertising. Like, I don't know if you guys know, Niles just wrapped his car, and it's fantastic.
Oh, thank you.
And they a lot of the trades here, they put a magnet on their car,
Uh-huh. Yep.
or
I
they
see that
write in
all the time.
Sharpie on the side of their car for their marketing and their advertising. But the new wave is you wrap it and you get more dollars per, you get more. So AI is like that. You can look more professional. Your website's going to look better. Your Facebook content is going to look more professional. Your
Mhm.
images are going to look more professional. That's probably the biggest thing for me is the image generation. I develop a lot of products, and the most painful part of the products was getting product images.
Mhm.
You'd have to set up a studio. You'd have to get professional photos, background. Like, it was very complex lighting, like all of this
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
And now you can just whip out your phone and take a picture and upload it, and you can put it in any scene, scenario. Um, a small one person shop can look like a Fortune 500 company with very little to no effort. And that's what I think that it represents.
Mhm.
We're talking every aspect: audio, visual, writing, business design. Like, I think I put out a business checker model on my LinkedIn a couple of
Mhm.
months ago. And we used to put on these, and I think they still do, but there's a business pressure cooker. Let's see how good your idea is. Okay. And over the weekend, they'd go through all, like, and it was just a compressing. Things would take you a year to figure out on your own if a business was a good business.
Mhm.
And, checking markets, getting all the data behind it, just all of this stuff. And you come out the end of the weekend and be like, yeah, I want to do that business, or it's not a good idea, whether
Yeah.
you're not going to make any money or just it's going to fall flat, instead of spending a year doing it. And so now fast forward to the tools that we have AI now, That checker that I made will do that entire compressed weekend in about 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You can feed
Yeah.
it all the information. It'll tell you the total market share, the total, what you were likely to get as far as market share,
Mhm.
profit margins. It's SWOT analysis, if you've heard that before.
Yeah.
Like all of this, and come out at the other end and be like, this is how much you're going to make at the end of year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you look at that and you're like, nah, not worth it.
Yeah, not
Or
worth it.
that's amazing. I definitely want to pursue
Yeah,
that.
I need to get a patent yesterday on
And
this.
yeah, right. And I've run businesses that I have, friends' businesses, and the numbers come up pretty well.
Mhm.
They align with what we've experienced. And so you can now in 5 minutes pressure cook an entire business idea. And it's good to shut down ideas because there's a lot of bad ideas. I have a lot of bad business ideas. I have some good ones. And I can work through the bad ones in minutes now.
Mhm.
And really analyze the good ones. And it can create business plans, pitch decks, like everything you can think of. And that's really it, is time.
Yeah.
The time that I've done almost everything, doing I think Venture Madness, if you've heard of that. I'm like,
What is it?
It's called Venture Madness down in Phoenix. It's for tech startups.
Oh, no.
I'm the only company. My companies are the only ones that have made it 3 times in a row to the top 5.
Nice.
And
Congratulations, by the
yeah,
way.
yeah, it was a lot of fun. But with a board and a team of advisors, it took 6 months to develop the presentations.
Yeah.
We've got one coming up on Monday. I think it's called Moonshot up here. I think it's going to be this
Yeah,
Monday.
with what's the organization that's with?
SBDC.
Okay, yeah.
And their thing is Monday, so it's a regional version of that. Somebody can normally they take weeks to develop the presentation. Like I said, I took months to develop the presentation. We're talking minutes.
Mhm.
So right now, well, I don't know when this is going to air, but you could literally have enough time to enter that and present it on Monday.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah, and today's Thursday for context.
Today's Thursday.
So.
Versus, maybe next year,
Mhm.
because there wasn't enough time. That's what it really represents, is anything you can imagine.
Yeah. Well, and going back to cybersecurity, I use it in part for this. Help me write my cybersecurity policy. It's a daunting task, but if you use AI for it, hey, it's pretty easy. You review it, you give it a little bit of thought.
Or what questions should I ask Niles?
Yeah.
Like those are the kind of things that you could ask. And it is weird. What I liken it to is Iron Man, Jarvis.
Yeah.
Everybody has a Jarvis. You can even talk to it. I mean, there's so the mobile app you can push and have full on conversations with it.
Yeah, if you haven't tried it, I mean,
it's
it'll blow your mind if you haven't seen it.
But everybody now, so what does that do to the world? And I don't think most people, I'm guessing 98% of the population doesn't realize that they have access to this yet. But what if everybody in Prescott Valley, Chino Valley, knew that they had access to Jarvis?
Mhm.
That's where we're at. And I think a lot of people that jumped on early were, this is cool, but it's not there yet. Like AI in general and things like that. I hear a lot of that. Oh, well, it's gluing pizzas together and things like that. It's like, well, that was a year ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
You've got to realize that this stuff is maturing. Back to what we said, in milliseconds.
Well, if you look at the old AI generated video of Will Smith eating spaghetti.
Yeah.
But then they did it again like a year later, and it was like, it looks real now.
It looks real. Yeah. The videos and the movies that we're going to be at a time where fan fiction, I guess, will just be through the roof, because you can sit at home, and the vision that I see is we're sitting there, and there's been a TV show that's been off the air for 20 years, and you can look at it and be like, yeah, I want to see a new episode that's about this, and I want it to have these actors at this age. And it's going to be like the Alexa's going to be like, oh, coming right up. And within 3 minutes, we have an entire movie or TV show or series based on what we thought of right there in everything that we want to see in real time.
Well, you've seen the Black Mirror episode about that.
Yeah.
It was the Netflix of the future. Yeah.
We're not that far from there. If you're playing with, there's tools called Sora for video generation. They limit you to like, is it 30 seconds or 5 seconds?
Well, they keep expanding it. So I don't know. Yeah.
You can do that. And then for businesses and products, like you can create an entire video. I'm using it for B-roll for our products and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So we're turning out Facebook stuff that would normally take a production team. And I've had production teams come in, interview my staff. We said that it takes days.
Yeah.
And we're turning out the same, I feel similar or same quality videos um, in about 15 minutes.
Yeah. So my daughter, she's a teenager, a little bit of an activist nowadays, and this is, I'm sure you're aware, a pretty controversial topic when it comes to creatives and taking creative jobs away and giving us all this AI stuff. What are your thoughts about all that?
I think everybody's blown away it happened in reverse. I think everybody expected the blue collar, low end, jobs were going to be the first thing to go away through automation.
Hmm.
And 2022, when what ChatGPT 3 came on and people were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a thing, shocked the world. There are so many, legal issues with how these things are trained.
A lot of those.
But the
Yeah.
bottom line is by the time the legal system catches up with it, it'll be so far in the future.
Kind of be too
And
late.
it'll be too late. These things will be
Yeah.
too far advanced. I don't know. I have this discussion with a lot of people, and I think you and I have talked about it too. I don't know what things are going to look like in the job market in 10 years. I don't know.
It's hard to picture.
It's really hard to picture because
I
I think
think
of
this
one world,
throws.
the Star Trek world where like there's no money, there's everybody gets,
Yeah.
but it's like, well, then why do certain people get to own mansions still, and why there's so many issues in how we get there.
The utopia that some people dream of with this technology, we're not seeing that come to fruition. So it's like,
And
okay, where are we?
How do we get there?
Yeah.
And so when you talk about creatives and you talk about that, I think you're going to do what you enjoy. So if you're creating stuff, I think that you're going to really do it because you enjoy doing the process. And,
Mhm.
but why people wrench cars that they don't, need to, but they enjoy doing those kind of things.
Yeah, a
So
50-year-old vehicle that they still maintain.
because they're doing it not because of the economics, but because they enjoy doing it. So I think, but do I think that we're going to get these creative works that are going to sell for $50,000 meme coins or whatever? No, I don't know that that's still going to be a thing because somebody can just go online and in 30 seconds generate it. I do. And through the whole pandemic and everything, we really encourage people to start businesses. And I think there was more businesses, especially here,
Mhm.
started during that time period than any time in history. I do believe wholeheartedly that the next 5 years, maybe 10, because I'm always early. You can really do something right now. All the tools are there. Quit your job.
Yeah.
Utilize these tools. Go build a business. Go build something that will be worth something on your, at the 5-year mark. And then you actually have the choice of, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm going to sell this business. I'm going to go do something else. Versus I think people that are going to continue to work a job right now, other in this wait and see, are going to be the losers of this whole thing, because there's not a day that goes by where I don't see AI replacing job functions,
Mhm.
but it doesn't replace the entrepreneur yet. And
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Well, the entrepreneur is the one telling AI what to do.
right.
So
And so I'm excited for those that are ready to take that step and go do something. Don't wait.
Yeah.
That's really it.
So jump on it. If you've
jump
been
on it.
wondering about your next move,
And doing that business,
get on it.
there is nothing. You have Jarvis. You go build an Iron Man suit.
Mhm.
I mean, that's what we've
And,
got.
funny thing with Jarvis, so we got a new robot vacuum. I know it's kind of low tech compared to what we're talking about.
Does it
We,
talk
we
to
named
you?
it Jarvis.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Does it talk to you though?
Oh yeah.
It does. Oh,
It's one of
really?
those Robo-Rock brand.
Oh wow.
They are phenomenal, by the way. If you're
They've
looking
evolved.
for one,
Mine. I don't know if I like mine talking to me.
you can you can tell it to find your pet, and it'll give you a video feed. It'll go find the dog or whatever.
While you're not home.
Yeah.
I hope that's on a separate Wi-Fi connection.
Yeah, get into that scary part of that.
No, but that's cool. I'm excited about that stuff too, and
Yeah.
that makes things really interesting. And robotics is not far. I actually put a chart up. I don't know if you saw it.
I don't think
We've got
so.
AI, which kind of has a really steep
Uh-huh.
adoption rate. Like it's really so. It took 20 years for what is it, like VHS to reach an adoption rate of like 80% of the population.
Mhm.
And this is on the rate of like 2.5 years. That's how much faster things are moving when
Wow.
we talk about AI, just because it's easy to get to. It's the fastest growing application ever.
Yeah. Low barrier to entry.
Low barrier. The higher barrier is robotics.
Yeah.
And
Takes a little more
it's just
capital
because
to-
it takes a little more capital, and it takes time. You got to build these things, and then you have to ship them.
Well,
And
and
then you have to
just in the last
infrastructure.
year with robotics, I think just last year or two, we've seen how many companies release their first humanoid.
Well, and that's the thing is,
Right.
so robotics is 2 to 3 years behind AI. So you look at this really, really steep growth rate of AI, and now delay it 2.5 to 3 years,
Yeah.
and robotics will be behind that. And
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
we all want our own robot, and we've been dreamt that since we were little kids, right? Like,
Well, it depends on who you ask. My
Without
wife is
Terminator
terrified.
robot, yeah, but
She's like, if you get one, it's getting locked in the closet at night.
that's the thing. Yeah, yeah. No, what do you do with it? It doesn't need to sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's too funny.
Well, and we're back to nightmares.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Yeah.
That took a fun loop.
So we're almost out of time. Before we wrap up, why don't you tell people about the latest project you've been working on with the walkie-talkies and what you're doing there?
Yeah. So everything evolves. A lot of the tech companies that I've been involved with in the past, it took something old, and it didn't. The way you interface with it feels the same as it does today. Like so, an example is phones. Whether it's a cell phone, whether it's a desk phone, they look and feel pretty much the same as they did 20 years ago, 30 years ago, even 50 years ago.
Yeah.
But the inside is different. So now instead of having phone lines everywhere, and if you remember the old pictures of Prescott, there was thousands of phone lines going down Gurley Street and things like that just to make one phone work. That all evolved, and now it's a computer on your desk. Same thing with your cell phone. It evolved from a complicated piece of hardware, and now it's a computer in your pocket. Walkie-talkies are kind of getting ready to go through that same thing. And so it was a scenario to where walkie-talkie technology is about 100 years old, and they've evolved a little bit. And if you go around, restaurants have them, cities use them, schools use them because they're convenient and they're easy to use. It's getting ready to go through that same process. It's going to turn into a computer in your hand instead of it being old school 100-year-old walkie-talkie. And so I'm taking a technology and we're going to market for those industries to replace all the walkie-talkies that people have. And it's 1 million businesses in the US into a computer in your hand that does the same function, but then unlocks a lot of other things. Everything from like locations, you can do private messaging, you can do apps on them and things like that. But the thing is unlike a cell phone, they do work just about everywhere.
Yeah.
And
You're developing some stuff to really make them more robust.
And so the idea is, and I think that's why it really hasn't taken off yet, is because you had cell phones, which sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, depending on how close you are to a tower. But walkie-talkies kind of worked everywhere as long as you were nearby each other. And now the technologies have evolved to where these work like walkie-talkies as far as the reliability, but the reliability is there to where they almost always work. There's very few places that we've been where these don't work, but yet then bringing all that functionality into one. And so it's kind of like a stealth thing. It's been exciting, and the demand has been incredible. We liken it to, if you remember the old Nextel phones, people love those. And, you could walkie-talkie with people and still use it as a phone. And so this is real similar to that, but really we're focused on replacing all the walkie-talkies out there. And so it's exciting time.
Well, and I think now that technology is to a point and infrastructure is to a point where you can actually deliver.
That was really it. It is delivering, and things have to evolve. And it's kind of like the robots that we were talking about. When you have physical pieces, that physical piece takes longer to evolve. It's not that the technology is new, but to get it out there and in the hands and evolve all the cell sites and the towers and the satellites, like a accumulation of all these technologies, we've kind of hit that peak. So I'm excited to kind of go through that world because it reminds me of so many transitions: typewriter to computer, desk phone to VoIP, analog, cell phone to a computer in your hand kind of thing. This is just that same path. And I actually am blown away by how delayed it is.
Right. Yeah. We were talking about competitors for it, and there's pretty few, surprisingly.
There's pretty few. And so it has been incredible. I'm excited to do that.
Awesome. And if one of our listeners is interested in getting a hold of you for that, how would they reach you?
So our website is Nextcell, not Nextel, but nextcell.co is the website for that.
Okay, so NEXTCELL?
That's just one L.
CEL.
One L. Yep. Just
Next
like
CEL.
Next Cell. Yep. So it's exciting. And obviously you can reach out to us through there. We do everything through partners and
that's
connect you with the right partner. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time and coming on. And it's always a pleasure to chat with you.
It's fun. The hour went by fast.
Yeah.
You're like, I think it'll be 30 minutes, maybe 40, but here we are. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. So that's been another episode of Out of the Dark. I'm your host, Niles Benghauser. We'll catch you next time.